Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. This is Katannya Alven speaking from Droitwich, near Worcester. This is very much a UK one, and I'm starting with this video of Boris, or Boris Johnson, the Irresistible Rise. I believe it was a BBC, or some of the film is a BBC one. It's very, very interesting. A completely different individual background and everything else to Theresa May or to Cameron. So very, very interesting. And there we've got the Tower Bridge at the back. I'll play just a little of this.
Paddling his own canoe in the river that runs through the family farm in Somerset.
This is Boris at the age of 5. But at the beginning of the video, they've got Boris playing tennis. And this really, here we've got Boris being filmed on the tennis court.
With his siblings. Oh yes. One is an eco-businessman. One a Tory MP. And the third is a mischievous journalist. Boris Johnson is a formidable, unorthodox competitor.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like it.
His love of life has helped make him the country's most popular politician.
Private eye, we call him Beano Boris, because he's a character from an old-fashioned cartoon strip. Everything's cripes and blimey and chaps and blah.
But those who know him claim there are at least 2 different Boris Johnsons.
He's a slave.
He's obviously in Madame Tussauds there, standing against his waxwork.
Fox, disguised as a teddy bear.
Behind the clown mask is said to lurk a deadly serious political operator, determined to get to the top, despite his colourful private life.
He said, have you got any advice? And I said, yes. Lock up your Willie.
Well, I just think that's wonderful.
This film examines what really makes Boris tick, and whether he's a man to trust, and whether he could replace his fellow Etonian at number 10.
He knows that life is a competition. He always wants to be top.
And Boris Johnson speaks more candidly in this film about his chances of grabbing the top job than he's ever done before.
This programme was such a bad idea.
There wasn't any evidence then of the modern obsession with health and safety.
Right, what I want to point out is when somebody's come from a farming background, and although I didn't come from a farming background, from the age of probably about 9, we had ponies and we were involved in the New Forest Pony Club, but we had friends who were farmers and we were very often staying on their farm. But we had a small amount of land and my mother gardened, and so it's like when you get your hands in the soil, there is something about that appreciation of nature. And I remember making my own little garden and loving it. So I think it's very important to understand both where President Trump has come from the building world, right from the very small child who was on the building sites with his father, and also to understand where Boris Johnson has come from, and also other people in positions of power around the world. So Boris Johnson has got extremely sound roots. But now I want to go on to the next video. Now this is Anne Widdecombe at the European Parliament. And she's just saying, I have to say
very clearly that the ending of free movement was a massive factor in the British public's decision to leave the EU. It was one of the biggest driving forces. And yet there appears to be within this Parliament today political myopia towards that. You're actually trying to tell Britain that we shouldn't have an application process, which has just been declaratory. We shouldn't dare to ask for proof in order to back up statements in an application. The British people expect the British government to end free movement and to do it in a way which is effective, not merely nominal. And the sooner that this Parliament wakes up to that, the sooner we will actually get the right sort of dialogue.
Brilliant. I would call her a very British woman, and I very much enjoy her strength and her beliefs. I'm aligned with those. Now, this is Bill Cash, and he's a favourite of mine. He's a Brexiteer. Very much appreciate him in the House of Commons. And he's saying people on this side of the House, okay.
The House have fought sometimes against the establishment in order to achieve this objective. And all I can say
So, he's Conservative.
with all my heart is to thank the British people for the decision that they have taken. We have been the catalysts. We have tried to present the arguments, and if insofar as the member for Perth is right at all, it is the fact that, yes, there has been a victory in the general election. The British people have spoken. They have supported the idea of leaving the European Union, and we will do so on the 31st of January accordingly. But I want to make another point, which is this. The decision to leave was taken by the British people, not on a party political basis. The argument back in this House always gravitates around party politics. Actually, the decision in the referendum was taken by the British people in their individual homes at breakfast or the night before. They sat round and they talked to one another and said, what are we going to do tomorrow? And they made a decision. When they made that decision, and then they found that Remainer MPs, whether on the opposition benches or even on our own benches, were repudiating the decision that the individual voters had made, whether they came from Labour constituencies, Liberal Democrat, or more likely Conservative constituencies. They deeply, deeply resented the fact that they had decided themselves with their families to go to the ballot box to vote to leave the European Union in that referendum. And then they found, to their intense annoyance, fury and their disappointment, that their Member of Parliament used the position that they had in this House to frustrate the decision that they had taken. That is why so many of the Labour Members of Parliament have now left the benches that they held before, simply because in Labour Leave marginals in particular, what people did not appreciate in this House was the fact that as a result of, for example, of the European coal steel community and the massive subsidies that were given to other countries in places north of Coventry, in coal and steel communities, that those people had been deprived of their livelihoods because of the collapse of the steel and coal industry, much of which was driven by the anti-competitive nature of the European Coal Steel Community framework. And if you were to take a map of the United Kingdom and superimpose upon it the coal and steel communities, you would see a very similar, a very direct correlation between the decisions that were taken in the general election when they drove out Labour members of Parliament because they were not doing what the people who were voting wanted them to do. They wanted to leave the European Union, and the Labour members of Parliament who were driven out refused to allow them to be as national and as determined as they wanted to be in terms of their own constituency and their national interest. That is where the problem lies, and the Labour Party just simply cannot bring itself, even now, to understand the feelings of the people north of Coventry and in other parts of the country who found that their own Member of Parliament had let them down.
Exactly the saying was so true, and they reneged on their promises to the people, and quite right that they've been superseded now by probably very often mainly the Conservative parliamentarians. Now let's just go to who is the EU. What are they about? Well, that headline is quite clear. This is how EU bosses spend UK money, and the EU's shocking financial corruption. That has been known by some people, probably an increasing number, for many, many, many years. And I would say the EU was the centerpiece that was put in place by the banksters. The satanic one world government was put in place by the banksters and a number of members of parliament.
the European Union misused British tax money. We talk about Brussels' financial corruption, and Clive Lewis wanting a referendum on the monarchy. For the last few years, in the last decade or so, we have been told about the gravy train in Brussels and with the European Union officials and what they actually do with the money that we give them. So obviously, as you know, the way the European Union operates is primarily they have a budget that is contributed by all the member states and all the 28 countries that are part of this club. And what they do is they use the tax receipts that they receive from the taxpayers from each nation, and the governments give that money to Brussels, and then Brussels decides how to spend that money back on the same people. Now, you would think that just like any other government treasury, for example, you give your tax money, they will spend it on services that actually matters to you. Not really, because they have better priorities for themselves. The money that you give to them, all of us, not necessarily, they wouldn't necessarily go towards things that they have been promising to spend on, whether all these various European programs and projects that they have, which is, again, pointless, because we could do that ourselves as a country. But no, they have created this gravy train. So firstly, in Belgium there is this agreement for the diplomats and the political staffers and officials. For them, they are exempt from paying taxes and VAT on most goods and services, including private expenses. There is currently a situation where latest figures show that Belgium missed out in claiming around £500 million in VAT payments. Now,
you know that MEPs can claim foreign language classes and
He started off by saying, did you know that?
private healthcare, but best of all, not just for me, but for my whole family. In addition, I am given £4,000 every month for a local constituency office, which does not include staff salaries. That's on top of that. It only is for rent and office equipment, and no receipts required. And when I asked how I could repay the unspent money back to the EU, I was told that there is no facility to repay the money. Rest assured, I'm keeping a tab, and monies unspent will be given to a UK registered charity in the Northwest.
Okay, all these links will be in the description box, so do go in there and look at the rest of them, because I've only played little bits just to give you an idea of the criminality of the EU, just a touch, and how the British people feel about and have felt about Brexit and the importance of being out. And so 31st of January is when we come out. Now, also look in the description box, because while we're cleaning up the swamp in England, we need to, or anywhere else in the world, we need to clear up our own swamp. And you will see links in the description box of ways that you can really help yourself clean out your own personal, emotional and thought form closet and bring the best of yourself to the forefront and live success now. So you'll see the process, and so other links that are all personal development and will be very helpful. And there's one that's coming, if I haven't got it in at the moment, it will be coming, and it's called the Metamorphosis Event, and that's a Leslie Figa Delphin one. And having spent 21 years in Delphin doing the courses or over that period of time, and it has absolutely transformed my life of how I think about myself and what my plans are for the future. So God bless everyone, love and light, and talk to you over the next video. Bye bye for now. This is Katannya Alven saying God bless.